Over 100 years ago in Melbourne, torchlight processions were created to bring together the state's firefighters and the community they served. One of the most significant of these processions was to celebrate the Fire Brigade's Act of Parliament in 1891. To commemorate the centenary of this event, the Victorian Country Fire Authority Brigades, in conjunction with the Victorian Fire Services Museum and the Urban Fire Brigades Association, walked in the footsteps of their predecessors. For the first time in 100 years, the torch flames were relit. Only this time, they shone more brightly, because there were more to carry on the vital task others had started. 1,500 firefighters came to participate in this event, the backbone of Victoria's urban firefighting force. From as far away as Mildura to the north, Portland to the west, and Sale to the east. The parade was headed by senior officers and firefighters of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade. They were followed by senior officers from the Country Fire Authority and 94 brigades of the CFA. Many of these brigades demonstrated the history, pride and character of the past. Many were formed by local councils prior to the Country Fire Brigade's board formation in 1891. Ballarat City, one of the largest and oldest brigades. Clunes, with a history dating back to 1864. Kyneton, with some 125 years of service. Echuca and Kangaroo Flat brigades, which were largely created by families in the gold mining period. Families which also migrated as far away as Rutherglen and Shepparton. Tungamah, a small but equally historic brigade, followed by Hamilton and Casterton, which were formed in the 1890s. Geelong City was formed as far back as 1854. Then Sale, a very capable brigade. And Frankston, which, surprisingly to most people, is a CFA brigade. One with a long tradition and a love for memorabilia. Warrnambool was formed in 1863, 10 years before the first torchlight procession. Castlemaine, even earlier, founded by miners and small traders in and around the town in 1854. Wangaratta, Creswick, Kerrang, Swan Hill and Benalla were all formed in the last century. Creswick as far back as 1854. Stawell, Sebastopol, Golden Square and Pakenham were built, like so many others, by people actively involved in the community. Older members guiding younger people towards making a vital contribution to Victoria's safety. While there are 860 permanent staff and firefighters with the CFA, there are almost 80,000 other volunteers helping to protect Victorians. Many, even after retirement, supporting the organisation in many ways. Bright, from our beautiful Ovens Valley area, was a brigade which, like many others, travelled long distances to take part in the march. Euroa, an active brigade with an extremely fire-conscious community supporting them. Mooroopna and Warrigal, which were both formed in the 1880s. Seymour, Wodonga and Dandenong date back to the early 1890s. It was a sight to be remembered, stretching the whole length of Burke Street. And this represented only a small percentage of the total CFA force. There are 1,200 more brigades that didn't take part. Imagine the length of the parade if they did. Woodend, Curramborough date back to 1875, and Bendigo is one of Victoria's oldest, formed in 1855. Almost 150 years of service. Kangaroo Ground was one of the rural brigades that did take part. They have their own centenary approaching in 1992, which will have a local celebration and historical display. Brigades such as this are a key part of the protection of Melbourne's fringe areas. Werribee, which follows the band, is a relative youngster. It only dates back to the First World War, but what an active brigade. The historic equipment belongs to many eras. Many of these horse-drawn old steamers and fire equipment can be seen at the Victorian Fire Museum. In 1944, following the tragic bushfires, the Country Fire Brigades Board and its urban force amalgamated with the rural bushfire brigades to form the Country Fire Authority. And it's a force that continues to grow, as is ably demonstrated by the youngest taking part, the Sunbury Junior Fire Brigade, most of whom are from fire brigade families. They were followed by smart brigades from Baxter, Cooira, Port Arlington, Broadford, Leithville, Fairfield, Maryville, APM Brigade, Whittlesea, Doveton and Yarrambat, who were obviously looking for a Best Dressed award. But they had plenty of competition from others like Scoresby, Melton, Hoppers Crossing and Craigieburn, all supported by families and friends who also play their part fulfilling vital communications and support roles in times of crisis. And as the parade comes to a close, we see the firefighting vehicles used over the years, both the old and the new. Like the marches of old, the Centennial Parade of 1991 ended at Spring Street. When it was over, some just couldn't wait to tell families and friends. Either that, or they were trying to find out about other types of hotspots. At the conclusion, on the steps of Parliament House, there was time to relax, reflect, and to record some memories of this emotional event. In these relaxed moments, the tightly knit qualities of Victoria's firefighting force is clearly evident. It is the result of people contributing many years of voluntary work to an essential organisation, the CFA. Chief Officer Brian Potter, whose career came to a close at the end of this memorable year, would appreciate this as well as anyone. He started as a rural volunteer with the CFA in the 1960s and worked up to the position of Chief Officer. He and others, such as Minister for Police and Emergency Services, Mal Sandon, the Lord Mayor, Mr. Meldrum, and senior officers like Alan Richards of the Metropolitan Fire Brigade were all very appreciative of the effort and commitment that the parade demonstrated.
It was a fantastic sight, and when you consider that we had a unit from the MFB and over 90 units from the CFA around Victoria, from as far afield as Mildura, Portland and Bairnsdale. I think that speaks wonders for your commitment, and on behalf of the government I'd just like to say my thanks to you for what you've done tonight. Can I also thank you for your commitment throughout the year, because we couldn't have the effective fire service that we have in this state without the strong volunteer working beside the fully professional firefighters that we've got in both services. You do a magnificent job, and the quality of life that we enjoy in Victoria is enhanced by what you do and the commitment you show. Thank you very much for what you did tonight. It was a way for Melburnians to see the incredible depth and just how many firefighters we have. There were some 1,600 marches tonight, and as Len said, that's about an 80th of the total CFA contingent. An enormous contribution that you all make. Well done. You can be very proud of what you've done tonight. Thank you very much.
For those of you that weren't here earlier this century, when some of these fire trucks that you saw tonight were in service, I'd like to remind you that, as I understand it, Torchlight parades, such as the one we have enjoyed tonight, were an annual event in Melbourne. Before tonight, the last parade was held in 1905. These parades were held in conjunction with a display of skills by the Fire Brigade, featuring the latest in the technology of the day. In 1991, we can see and appreciate the skills of the Fire Brigade in containing the damages of such disasters as the recent Coot Island fire, and in their capacity for quick response to avert potential disasters in the city and in the country fire brigades precincts. On behalf of the City of Melbourne and my councillors, it gives me great pleasure to congratulate you on having achieved your centenary.
Everybody here tonight must be very, very proud of the way in which they conducted themselves, and also the way in which they've demonstrated to the community of Melbourne of what the Country Fire Authority and also the Melbourne Fire Brigade is all about. To my way of thinking, the members of the Melbourne community have no idea what commitment and community service that the CFA in rural Victoria and the provincial cities actually provide to that community. Tonight was an excellent example of that commitment, and I hope the Melbourne community really understand in some small way what you people, the volunteers and also the professional firefighters, bring to Melbourne.
But what we did tonight was to remind ourselves of the fact that organised fire service in Victoria goes back not only to 1891, when legislation finally confirmed the need for fire brigades in Victoria, but also right back to the early 1850s, and a number of brigades tonight have reenacted in a marvellous manner what was life in fire brigade in those days. I hope that those who follow us in another 100 years are able to also recapture what we have this evening. If they do, whatever the fire services of Victoria look like then they will also have a marvellous evening, because of the fact that that spirit that existed in 1891 and in 1851 also exists in 1991. I'm proud, as I'm sure every officer here is proud, to be a member of a fire service in Victoria, proud to be able to say that we marched in Bourke Street in 91. Thank you.